Welcome back. All right, so let's keep working on our road cone HDA and add some more details, really. Okay, let's jump back into Houdini. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to put the little hole in the top of this thing, okay? And one way we can do that, makes it real easy, is you'll notice that if you come to the bottom, so if you make sure you select the polybevel node that we're using to create this flat area here, if you come to the bottom of its parameter view, it has its output groups. All right, so this means it's going to output the new primitives that it created. All right, so all these little guys up here. So we can turn on our primnums. So all these primitive numbers up here, we can put it into a group. All right, we call it bevel prims. Or we can change the name. We can call this the top, like so. All right, and then we can actually view that just to verify that we have those primitives in that group by coming down to this group and attributes list. Okay, and you'll notice that if you don't see it right away, you have to come up to this little cogwheel here and set it to primitives. All right, but you notice that all of those primitives are in that top group now, and then all the primitives that aren't in a group are in this not in a group. All right, and so we have these top primitives, so I want to work on those guys. First thing I want to do is drop down a blast node. It's a node we haven't used yet, and this blast node basically allows us to delete stuff. So primitives, points, edges, stuff like that. So you notice that you have all these different component types up here. In this case, we want to delete primitives, and we want to delete all those primitives that are in that top group. So if you come into this little drop down here, all the available groups will be in this list that match a primitive type. Okay, so I'm going to hit top, and you'll notice I got rid of that top there. Very cool. So what we can do now is we can use another node called polyfill. So I'm going to drop down this polyfill node. And what this does is it tries its best to fill in the gaps. So let's turn on the flag for this. There you go. And now it's filled in those gaps. So anywhere where there's a hole in the mesh, it tries to fill it in with quadrilaterals. Or in this case, I like to set it to single polygon. That way I have one polygon to basically select. All right, this is great because what we can do also is we can put these guys into a patch group. All right. And once we do that, just like in the polybevel node, we actually have those primitives now in the patch. And you can see that our top group is still available to us, right? But there's nothing in it, right? Because we already deleted all those primitives associated to that group. But now we have all those new primitives in the side of this patch. Okay? So what I can do after doing that is I need to drop down a clip node. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to get rid of this polygon down here. Now you could go and just blast away polygon 13, but that might change, right? So if we were to come up here in this tube and change the columns, you can see the primitive numbers changing. So we have to accommodate for those types of changes when we're working with procedural modeling. Okay, so a great way to decouple ourselves basically from that numbering is to drop down a clip node in this case, all right, and just leave it at its defaults because currently it's set in the Y direction. So it's pointing straight up in the Y. Okay, so this little green axis there, it's pointing straight up. And if you notice, if we come all the way to the bottom here, it's blasted away, basically, that bottom primitive. All right, so one thing I should note before moving forward here is if you hit enter, so if you have this node selected here in the network view, and you come back into the scene view over here, and you hit enter, you can actually see where that plane is. All right, and if I were to change the direction of this, all right, you can see that I'm cutting the geometry on that plane. All right, and so that's why this is working for us. All right, you also have this distance modifier. All these things come into play when you start to get more advanced with your procedural modeling. Okay, so moving forward, let's select and poly extrude this top primitive up there. So let's do a poly extrude. There we go. And I'm going to drop it down and wire it into the node network. And what we need to do now, let's turn off that divisions there. What we need to do now is we need to select this primitive. And remember, we have it in that patch group. All right, because we blasted the bottom one away, that's not there anymore. So now that's the reason why this is procedural, because we're not relying on those numbers. We're not relying on manual setups for our models. All this stuff, everything can change, and all these definitions that we're setting up with these nodes will still hold true. Okay, so with that in mind, let's set that patch group up here. So let's put the patch group in there. And you'll notice now when I inset this, it just does that one particular piece of geometry, that primitive. Perfect. Okay, so that's great right there. We just want to inset it a little bit. And then what I want to do is now I want to produce another group out of this. I want to get this new polygon right here. And we could do that with this output front group. So we just want to do that. So let's call this the top cap. All right, very cool. And then what we need to do is drop down another poly extrude node right below that. And we'll this time use the top cap. And I want to actually pull this one down like so. And voila, we have a road cone. Cool. Okay, so we need to do a couple more things here. But what I want to do first, before closing out this lecture, I want to drop down a clean node. And the reason why I want to do that is because we're starting to get a lot of empty groups. Okay, so you don't need to do this that often. I just want to do it right now to make sure that we clear out any group that we're not really actually using anymore. Okay, so a couple ways you can find out all the groups that you have in your current mesh is to come into the groups and attribute list right here. Or you can also just middle mouse click and hit this little info button on a node, on any of the nodes, to see what data is available at that point in time in the network. Okay, so currently we have these two prim groups, patch and top cap, and we don't really need them anymore. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this clean node is I'm going to remove patch and top cap. Okay, and to do that, we're going to come over here and turn on this remove groups, and then type in the name of the groups. So I want to get rid of patch and top cap. And now, if we were to middle mouse click on this guy, we have no more groups. And if we were to check in our groups and attribute list, no more groups. So we are nice and clean, and we are ready to go for the next step. So let's close out this lecture and keep moving forward.